Hello, my name is Clayton Ackerman, and this is my critique for Art History 2. So first, we have the Orsan Michel, which was built in 1336, originally as a grain market, but then later turned into a church in 1380 and only lasted until 1404. The exterior of this building is used as a placement of statues that were requested to be constructed by specific guilds to fill in the niches that are seen all around the exterior of the building. So the first piece we have here is the Four Crowned Saints by Nani de Banco. So the sculpture was created to represent four Roman sculptors that were asked by Diocletian, who was a Roman emperor, to create a sculpture of a pagan god. These men had refused and were then put to death because of their refusal. Nani de Banco made this sculpture to capture the reactions of the four men when they realized that they had gotten themselves into because of their refusal of what Diocletian had asked of them. So the subject in this piece of work can be considered a still life piece of work because of the subjects in the piece, which are people. They are shown to be discussing or kind of expressing what they're thinking, and then all while being completely still. So it's kind of like there's like some movement and life, but they're just staying completely still. But there is a great deal of texture in this piece, from the folds of the togas of all the men, and then the hair and the facial hair for the men, the facial features and their hands as well. And these could all be considered a demonstration of a smooth texture because of their finish on them. And then the sculpture reflects the culture it's from because of the clothing that they're wearing, which are known as togas, which were popular pieces of clothing that were worn in this time period. So the type of media used in this work of art is sculpture. This sculpture is made of a type of stone called Carrara marble, and this is a white or sometimes blue-gray marble that was used in sculpture for buildings by Romans. An obvious technique used in this work of art is stone carving. So this was used to create the images or illusions of faces, clothing, and expressions in order to produce the idea of four people who are standing there and act to be having a conversation of some sort. Balance between the elements of texture and value, and this creates a calming mood because of the expressions that the statues are giving off. The proportions of the statues are considered ideal because they truly represent the build of an actual human being, which is down to every last detail pretty much. This sculpture gives off of movement because you tend to look at all the statues and then you see the statue that is standing second from the last on the right, and it kind of looks as if it's looking off into the distance, and it could kind of sort of make you wonder where he might be looking off at. Um, and this piece has a great deal of unity between texture, value, and some space as well. Texture is the element that gives off the illusion of the faces, clothing, and the image of people. Value could also be seen in the folds of the clothing because depending on how the statues are positioned, like towards light, there are like some shadows you can see in the indentations of the carvings of how the folds in their togas and clothing are kind of um, created to be. So, and space is also present because this makes the positions of each man look like they're interacting with each other, kind of in the same area as each other. So I would say this piece makes me feel rather calm because of the expressions that the statues are giving off, which is kind of a neutral expression. So there's not really much going on there. I would say this work can be considered successful because of the correct demonstrations of the elements of texture, value, and space. But this piece has a little bit of character as well because of the aging from all the hundreds of years that's been around. So it really gives you an idea of how old this piece really is. And it also is an accurate representation of how people used to dress and look during this time period. The parts that make me feel that this piece would be considered successful are the correct incorporations of elements and the accuracy of how humans in this time period had looked, just based on how they're dressed and the style of their hair and their facial expressions, maybe as well. Um, some criteria to help others judge this piece would be to consider the incorporation of elements used as and the style that is being used as well. Uh, this work I would say, is unique because there are Roman sculptures being made. There usually is only one figure represented, but not four of them at once. Usually one standalone figure, but not four all in one piece. Um, but there isn't really any work being made like this today um, that be considered modern versions of this artwork. To the next piece, which is also in one of the niches of the Or San Michele, is by Donato di Niccolò Bardi, or who is also known as Donatello, a piece called Saint Mark, um, which is on one of the niches of the Or San Michele, and the sculpture was commissioned by the Linen Guild after their patron Saint Mark, who this piece was sculpted after. The original sculpture is no longer a part of the niche, as it was brought inside the Or San Michele church for safekeeping in 1977, but then was later replaced by a copy for outdoor display. So this sculpture is standing at a height of 7 feet 9 inches. So much like the Four Crowned Saints, um, this piece would also be considered a still life artwork because the man who this is sculpted after, who St. Mark, once again, appears to be standing in a pose as if he stopped to look at something off in the distance, sort of. But there is definitely a great amount of texture in the sculpture with the draping that and creases in his toga and his beard, as well as his facial structure and features, and in his hands as well. This would overall be considered a smooth and wavy texture. Um, from a cultural standpoint, this reflects the culture because of the clothes that he is wearing, and that reflects the time period this work also is reflecting off of, is based off of. But you don't see pieces like this being made today about these ancient historical figures. So the type of media used in this piece is once again sculpture. The work was sculpted just out of marble, and the technique that Donatello used in this piece is stone carving or carving reliefs known as schiacciato. It was very important to Donatello that he would use techniques for creating the most accurate pieces of artwork from what he was basing his work from. So the element that stands out the most in this artwork, I would say, would be texture because of the carved details in the sculpture from head to toe. Aside from the sculpture being a bit taller than the average height of a human, which again is 7 foot 9, and the proportions are ideal in terms of creating the visual representation of a human being from this time period. The only sense of movement in this piece would be how the toga is draping down to his feet, rather, and it gives off the sense of gravity kind of having a pull on his clothing. So when I look at this piece of art, it kind of gives off a sense of fascination because of how old and ancient this sculpture is, because it makes you think of how many hundreds of years this piece has been around for, and it kind of gives you an idea of how old it really is. Um, this would be considered a successful piece of art because of the accurate incorporations of human-like features and artistic elements all throughout. There is some character also in this piece because it shows again how old the sculpture really is, like the wear and tear and weathered down look from all the years of it sitting outside of Orsan Michel. Makes this artwork a success would be the accurate demonstrations of humanistic features such as the face, the body structure and poses, and the clothing from this time period. This sculpture may not really be considered unique because there are many other sculptures that have the same features as this one does, those being Augustus of Prima Porta, the orator, and many others as well. But in terms of sculpture being made today, there aren't really any pieces like this that would be found being produced in today's world. And here's some of my works cited, my resources here. And thank you for watching.